have your product and you have your company and you brand yourself and what you can give to your customers, and that's like your company's branding. But then you also in a way, your employees, you're also marketing to them, and you are trying to understand that you're giving them the right product in that case is like a job and it's something that they love doing, the right pay. So I think employer branding is really how you position yourself and how you market yourselves, not to your customers but to the people inside your company, your employees.
Welcome to Grow Think Tank. This is the one and only place where you will get insight from the founders and the CEOs of the fastest growing privately held companies. I am the host. My name is Gene Hammett. I help leaders and their teams navigate the defining moments of their growth. Are you ready to grow?
Have you ever thought of all of the work that you put into branding your company? You actually use it to get clients? Well, what we're talking about today is employer branding. Now, this is a new term for many people because you think of product branding or product marketing, but there's some of the core elements that go into how you talk about your company, how you talk about the culture of the company, the values, how you position the company, why you're different. All of that is a very important episode. And I think it's even more important now than ever before because attracting the right people has never been harder, also never been more expensive, and it's never been more important to attract the right people. So today we look at employer branding with the co-founder of Brand Metrics. They're a marketing company that does attribution across the many channels that we have and bridging these technologies together. Really great company. They were number 365 on the Inc. list this past year. And the co-founder I'm talking about is Mada Seghete. I probably butchered the last name, but I really enjoyed this conversation with her because she really thinks intentionally about who the company is and why you exist and how you're serving the people across the company and how you come up with that. We dive into this whole aspect of employer branding. What are the core elements of it? But also, how do you as a leader tune into what is the most important aspects of that? And how do you communicate that across the prospects, but also the current employees and the returning employees that you may have? All inside this episode for you. Now, my whole job is to help you become an extraordinary leader. I love companies that know that leadership is a critical force inside the growth of their companies. Those that believe that we just execute and just things get done, they're not necessarily my people, but those people that understand that leadership is the key to more growth and to creating a place where people are performing at their best. And that creates growth beyond measure. That's my people. So if you are curious about what's next in your own journey of leadership, I'd love to have a conversation about what is getting in your way. I do this all the time. I've been an executive coach for 10 years, and I love to have conversations about the thinking that gets in your way of being an even stronger leader and how that is translated across the organization, what your opportunities for improvement are. If you want to have that conversation with me, all you have to do is go to genehammett.com and schedule your call. Inside that call, we'll have a different kind of conversation, the one you're not having with your co-founders, your board, your investors, or your executive leadership team. We will have a kind of conversation that allows you to grow in that moment and have new insights and a new sense of awareness. If that scares you, great. If it scares you away, then you probably need it more than most. But I offer this to you because I really believe that leadership is the core force of growth. If you want to have that conversation with me, just go to genehammett.com and schedule your call. Now, here's the interview with Mada. Hi, Mada. How are you?
Great.
Excited to have you on the podcast.
Super happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, we're going to jump into a very interesting topic today. But before we get started, tell us a little bit about your company, Brand Metrics.
Brand Metrics. We are a mobile linking and attribution company. We help companies build cross-platform experiences. Imagine getting a text message, you click on a link, you have the app, you don't have the app. We take people to the actual content inside the app. They have it, maybe to the app store, and then they download the app and do the right content after. So we help bridge all of these crazy experiences between web and app, online to offline, and measure. And we help marketers and brands actually measure those experiences.
I was talking to a client the other day getting ready for a Black Friday sale. And I remember this was probably 2 months ago because they were really getting in the early stages of that. And I said, what do you want to create? He said, kind of what you just talked about. I want a full experience, like a 360-degree experience.
Yeah.
And it sounds like that's what your technology does, is provide marketers and companies with the ability to use mobile and use all these things together.
And bridge these experiences and measure the entire journey. I think we, marketers think about things as channels and platforms, but the user only thinks about it as one journey. They want to get into the store and maybe they don't have the right pair of shoes or the right size. They want to scan a QR code and get to the online store and order, a different different color or a different pair of shoes. They want to go on a website and say, oh, I want to actually get the app, and they want a link that actually takes them, and the app is there, and they're going to the same content that we're experiencing on the desktop web and the mobile web. So that continuous journey is actually quite hard today, and we help brands create that continuous journey.
Well, we're not going to talk about the technology. As fascinating as it is, we're going to talk about the company and some of the things that have made you guys who you are today. I've got in my notes here, you guys got over 450 employees. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's accurate.
And then you guys were on the Inc. list, number 365 last year. A lot of people remember these the first time they make the Inc. list. I don't know if this is your first company making the Inc. list, but do you remember the moment when you got notified that you're going to be 365?
I remember.
I'm
I
just
think
kind
I
of
just
curious.
clicked on a link and I was like, okay, this is where we are.
Well, I'm just kind of curious. What was the first thought you came to your head when you realized it was that high up?
I mean, it was cool. It was honestly, it was like, it should be higher. What can I do to make this higher? I think we were on a different list. We were like number 2 in the Bay Area. And like, I think in my head, I think I tend to be a little bit of an overachiever. So I think I definitely looked at the list and I was like, okay, next year we're going to be higher than this. So yeah.
I get that. Most of the people on the list, especially at the levels that you're at, are driven in unique ways and they feel like they could have done better or been higher. We're going to talk about, some of the key factors you're doing this. I think a lot of people are struggling today with hiring and finding right people. And what we found in our discovery with your company is you've got a different approach to this than most people. You call this employer branding. So before we go any further, what is employer branding to you?
I think it's like, you have your product and you have your company and you brand yourself and what you can give to your customers. And that's like your, company's branding. But then you also, in a way, your employees, you're also marketing to them and you are trying to understand that you're giving them the right product. The right product in that case is like a job and it's something that they love doing, the right pay. So I think employer branding is really how you position yourself and how you market yourself, not to your customers, but to the people inside your company or your employees.
And it really is probably outside the employee market too. So that it's not just employers, it's prospect employers as well. You're nodding.
Of course, yeah. It's that's. I think the majority of people think about it actually more as prospect, marketing yourself to prospects. I think about it as both. I think prospects are important, but I think helping the internal folks understand what they can get out of the company and making sure that like they take full advantage of the opportunities in companies, I would say is part of that. But again, I will agree that the majority of people, when they think employer branding, they think of themselves like marketing to new prospects.
Let's dive into this a little bit deeper, Mada. You brought up this concept of employer branding with my team, and we were looking at this and how this works in today's world. What are the key elements of employer branding? Like at a high level, what are the most important pieces?
I think it's the same as like this with like really regular marketing, right? You have to understand and have a positioning statement. You have to understand what makes you, your company different. You have to have communications to make sure that like people understand that. Even if you have it, you come up with it, but no one knows about it, then you're not doing a good job. And then you need to communicate both internally, and also externally, making sure that when you think about new people joining your company, making sure they're aware of that. And then the way you communicate that and the way you build awareness are through campaigns and programs, just the same way you would do if you're doing regular marketing, except, the target for that is current employees and potential employees. And actually, I would add a third one, which I don't think a lot of people think about, but I do think that there's this like third category of like returning employees. So people who maybe left your company, but on good terms and you want back. And it's the same way as resurrecting users on the marketing side. This is like resurrecting employees by getting people come back. And we've actually had quite a number of people come back to Branch in the past few months. So I think that has also been very interesting to see and drive.
I definitely want to talk about this returning employees, but you said something in there that I think is really interesting. I know in marketing, why you're different is such an important piece. I haven't really thought about it and how it applies to when you talk about employer branding. So just looking at why you're different, how do you use that to attract the right people for your company?
I think it's like, I think for us, it sits into two different buckets. One is like the company culture and the values, and kind of like trying to describe how it is to be working at Branch, and also what we expect from people. What are the type of people that you would work with at Branch? So that's part of it. The other part is, what you will gain from coming and working at our company, why you should pick our company and come work for us. So parts of it are the culture and how we'll be working here. But the other part of it, I think maybe we haven't done as much much in the past and we focus here is really describing like the opportunities that you get and, the things that are like maybe less about the culture, but more about like, if you come here, you'll get this type of opportunities that you might not get in a different company. So I think the two of them come together, right? Like this is the culture. This is how you'll feel working here. These are the type of people you'll work with that follow our values. And these are the things you'll get to work on and the things that make us different.
When you just explain it like that, one of the things I think of is most companies probably have things that they say, but they're not very intentional, right? They haven't really thought through specifically what do we say about the culture? How do we describe it? What are the words we use? Whereas if we were describing our product in the marketplace or we're in a sales conversation, we know exactly what worked. We have that workshopped. We're always refining it. But what you're saying to us is it really helps to understand, hey, what makes us different with culture and what are you going to get as an employee while you're here?
You have to be intentional. You also have to understand what resonates and you have to do interviews. I think when you're like 4 founders in a room, that intention comes from you. I like to describe culture as this like dragon. At the beginning, it's a baby dragon and you like, you decide where the dragon goes and you set the direction for the dragon. When you're a company of 450 people, you can't fully, it's like a beast. It's a giant beast and you can kind of like steer it, but you can't fully control it. And a lot of what you have to do as a founder and as a leader is also describe what it is. So if the dragon shifted in a direction, then maybe it's not exactly what you had in mind, but this is how the culture is. You either can work to shift it or you can say, actually, this is how we are. I want to make sure that we communicate that to new employees so they understand there is no disconnect between how you describe the company and what they will experience coming in. And I said more in the latter category. When we were young, we came up with our values in a room. And then over time, we actually changed them. Not like a lot, but as the company evolved, the values shifted. And every few years, I interview everyone and I try to understand what they think we value in people. And the last time we did that, we actually shifted some of our values to describe more where we are today, which was slightly different than like what we had put on paper when we were like 9 years ago.
Now, Mada just talked about why your company is different. Now, she talked about a couple of different things that are really important, like the culture and what's in it for the employees. But I'd like to add something here. Why is your leadership different? Give some examples and stories of that to help people understand that leadership is an important piece. Not only is it important because that's what they will receive, but that's what they're expected to give is be strong leaders. And if you create a place where people understand that, you will be attracting the right people, which is really important. But you will also create a place where people are really going to accept that leadership is a critical force inside the company. I think why different is a very great thing to think about intentionally as it relates to your company, but include in there why your leadership is different and how they're different across this and why that matters. Back to Mada. I think a lot of people need to hear this message about values and how important they are. If we looked in your organization, how do you use the values to make sure they're showing up every day?
A lot of ways. I think from during onboarding, we have a long conversation, give a lot of examples, how people live our values. When we talk about hiring decisions, we have a person outside of the team that's hiring that needs to interview on values. And we have questions that they have to go through to make sure the person kind of lives up the values. When we make when someone gets both promoted, but also sometimes firing decisions are based on values. Someone really, for example, one of our values is humility. And I can say that sometimes we've had people that were amazing, but they were really not, great at working with others. They were really not humble at all. And we have let go of people in the past because of this value specifically, and also others. When we do shout outs at all hands, people talk about values. We have a yearly value award where everyone submits people on the values, and then we actually choose winners in each category. But everyone who gets nominated gets their nominations, and we really celebrate them living our values. So it's a lot in the day-to-day. There needs to be a lot of that, and it has to be around your decisions in I think the hiring, promotion, and firing decisions based on values make a lot of sense as well.
Certainly in alignment with a lot of the conversations we've had here. I don't want to go through all of them. I know you mentioned humility, but how many values did you choose to have?
We have 8 values.
8.
Yeah, it's a lot.
I was going to say,
I think the way we define values, it's what we expect in people. We have something called the branch way, which is more a little bit of a description of our values, and it's more in line combined with our employer branding, which is build together, grow together, win together. So those are more like, this is kind of how it feels to work at Branch. We're builders. There's a lot of growth opportunities, and we really, we take on big challenges, and we try to make a change in the ecosystem. But the values are a little bit different. The values is like what we expect in people and the expectations we hold around each other. So there are things like initiative, humility, good judgment. So there are 8 of them, which I know it's hard. 8 is a lot.
Now, hold on. Mada just talked about the branch way. Now, I've been thinking about this for a long time. I think every company should have the blank way, whatever your name of your company is. The name of my company is Core Elevation. The Core Elevation way is a part of our values, but it's also why we are who we are, our mission. When I explained to my team members the mission of the company, they really lit up because they knew that what we're doing matters. And I was able to do that because I put this document together. Now, what is in the way document for you? Well, it really depends on who you are as a company, and you want to make sure that you have this. I actually love to have people come in and agree to these things and sign something physically. Does it mean anything? Is it a legally binding document? No, but it is something that puts them on notice that this is who we are. We take this very seriously. The way document, that if you are able to do this, really will help you in many different ways. I had a client of mine that was using this specifically in the work from home portion of this. They wanted to add more flexibility. And so one of the things we talked about is before they have this flexible advantage or benefit, why don't you make sure that they understand the way that which you work? And let's agree to what that text is and how that's going to translate into the company that you want to create. And when they are working from home, that they will follow these guidelines. And that really will provide something as a context to reflect back on and lead them through if they are out of alignment, but also to move forward and really help them with their job, be the performance people that you want them to be. And that's just my perspective on this. I love the fact that they're using the branch way. You should have that for your company too. Back to Mada. I want to go back to something you said earlier, Mada. You were talking about returning employees. Now, some people will say, you know what, once they're gone, they're probably gone. But there are good employees that leave that you probably weren't ready for them to leave. And you have the door open for them to come back.
Yeah.
You guys do anything different in that process of people exiting that makes them might want to come back?
I mean, we try to end on good terms with people. Yeah. And then I know, like big companies have this alumni thing. And we actually started it like 2 years ago, and we do an alumni newsletter. So we keep alumni in mind. And then we encourage people to stay in touch with people that have worked at Branch. We're moving offices, and we're going to invite some of our alumni to our party. So I think we focus a lot on building those relationships. I can think of a lot of the examples of people who came back, and there were like a lot of them. I think there were like 8 or 9 in the past 3 months. And like, if I think about the examples, each of them came back because of a relationship that they kept with someone. Like someone on my team continued doing one-on-ones with her manager after she left, just as an advisor. And then, she decided to come back. She wasn't as happy as her new company. One of the engineers from our early days met someone on the street, and then he's like, I don't think they'll have me back. And this person's like, no, you should, like, they will. And then we like got them to come back. My co-founder goes biking with this guy who was a CSM all the time. And then there was a new position, and we hired him in a leadership position. So there's been a lot but it's all based on these relationships. So kind of keeping the relationship going and not like being, oh, you're gone, goodbye. So I think that has really helped.
I want to put a spotlight on that. You have such a good management structure. Maybe it's just one individual manager. Even after they left, the employee wanted to stay in touch and to get a little bit of mentor advice, and eventually comes back. That's a really good signal that you've got great management, in that team.
No, he really is a fantastic manager.
We've been looking at this entire concept of employer branding. I'm sorry. When we've talked about all this stuff, is there anything that we've left out?
I think the thing that's really important is like, you should not go and do this in a room by yourself as a founder, or maybe with your head of people. I think it's very important that you actually talk to a lot of people. So in my case, I interviewed 40 people, and I also did a survey and got like responses for another 20. And then I also talked to leadership. So I think it's very important, especially if you're bigger, right? Like when you're young, when you're a very young company, you can say, okay, but when you're big, I found out there was, I'm very close to the culture branch, and I working on culture for a long time, but I found out something new. There was something new that, like, as I was doing these interviews, a lot of people mentioned that was unexpected, that I didn't know and I never talked about in interviews, that what makes Branch different. And it was really like, I think we talked a lot about our people and this idea that like people are really smart. A lot of people brought up the fact that they chose Branch because of how supportive people are. And that was something new. That was something we never really intended that. That wasn't part of like something that we decided was going to be. It wasn't like the build, grow, win. It was something new. And we're like, we need to market this more. 70% of the people we interviewed and we said why Branch said that, being supported by coworkers is very different than other places they've been at. So I think that the point here is you should not just like come. You need to ask everyone what makes it different. Why are they there? Why are they coming back? Why they have not left? And then take all that data and come up with the messaging versus like just do it by yourself in a room.
Great point. A lot of leaders will tell you that they want to include other people into it. And this is just another example of, creating your employer branding. You included up to 40 people in surveys and you found this nugget that has probably made a big difference in the way you guys are talking about what you do differently, being supportive. Mada, really appreciate you sharing this wisdom with us and being on the show and being a part of it.
Thanks, Gene. Great being here.
Here's a chance for me to reflect back on what we just discovered inside these interviews. I love to talk to leaders that have their finger on the pulse of people. And that's what we're looking at here is really understanding the people that work for you are such a critical force inside your company, not just for growth, but just how you work together and how you serve. And that's what this is being, is just really getting a better understanding of that and using that to attract more people like those people. And that is what I think you can take away from today's episode. My hope is that you're being the intentional leader that Mada talked about. And a lot of people will make excuses and say that, we just can't do that. They're too small, or things are going too fast. Well, I would argue against that. I would say you need to look down and look at your own leadership. And are you being reactive or are you being intentional? And if you are being intentional, how are you translating that across the company? Now, this is all about leadership. If you want to get a clear understanding where you are going next in your leadership, that's what I do as an executive coach. Let's have a conversation. Let's talk about where you're going, what's missing, the foundational element. This is, maybe you might say that this employer branding is only for companies that are bigger. I would disagree. I think it's for all size companies. And you want to make sure that you have this stuff laid out intentionally and be that kind of leader. So if you want to have that conversation, just go to genehammett.com and schedule your call. When you think of leadership and you think of growth think Think Tank. As always, we encourage. We'll see you next time.